I, 42 male, had my wife, 38 female, served with divorce papers the exact moment she pulled into our driveway after her weekend spa trip. She expected to walk into the house, unpack her bag, maybe order takeout for dinner. Instead, there was a Ford Expedition parked at the curb with some guy in khakis and a polo shirt leaning against it, holding a clipboard. The second she got out of her car, he walked up and said, "Are you Mrs.?" and used her full legal name. She said yes, and he handed her a manila envelope and said, "You've been served," and walked back to his car. This is what the process server told me how everything went down. She just stood there in the driveway staring at the envelope while he drove away. Then she looked up at the house, and I'm sure she noticed my truck was gone from its usual spot. She opened the front door with her key and walked into a house that looked completely different because half the furniture was missing. All my stuff was gone. My clothes, my laptop, my gaming system, my dresser, my nightstand. Everything that was mine had been removed while she was away for the weekend. Our daughter's room, she's 12, was untouched, but my presence had been completely erased from that house. The divorce petition she was holding in her hands explained exactly why. We live in Albuquerque. Been here since I moved out from Kansas 14 years ago for a job opportunity. I work as an inventory coordinator for a regional distribution center that handles food service supplies for restaurants and hotels throughout New Mexico and West Texas. My wife works as an executive assistant for a big company. Between the both of us, we do okay. We own a 3-bedroom house in the Northeast Heights that we bought 11 years ago for $250,000. Got it on a 30-year fixed mortgage. Monthly payment runs about $1,700 a month, including property tax and insurance. Our daughter goes to public school, makes honor roll every semester, plays soccer in a rec league. Good kid who's never been in trouble. From the outside, we looked like a normal middle-class family doing normal middle-class things. My wife and I met 17 years ago through a roommate I had at the time who knew her from college. We all went to an Isotopes game together. She and I hit it off talking about anything and everything. Exchanged numbers after the game. Started dating 2 weeks later. Got engaged 10 months after that. Married a year later. Had our daughter 2 years into the marriage when we were both 26 and feeling ready to be parents. The first 13 years were solid. We had the usual money stress from living paycheck to paycheck with a mortgage and car payments and daycare costs. We had arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes or who forgot to pay the electric bill or whether we could afford a weekend trip to Santa Fe. Normal couple stuff that every marriage goes through at times. But we communicated well and made sure we didn't stay angry at each other for stupid shit. I really thought we were doing okay. Then about 3 years ago, she started talking about wanting to join this wine tasting club she had heard about through a coworker. She said they met once a month on Saturday afternoons. Group of women who would get together at different restaurants or wineries around town to try wines and learn about wine pairings. She had never been particularly into wine before, but she said it sounded fun and sophisticated and like something she deserved to do for herself. I encouraged her because she was right. She deserved to have her own interest outside of work and being a mom. So she joined the club and started going to these tastings once a month. First few months, it seemed totally fine and exactly what she had described. She would come home around 7 or 8 on those Saturday evenings, little tipsy, tell me about the wines they had tried, show me pictures she had taken with the other women. But then things started shifting in ways that felt a little strange, like my gut was nudging me. The monthly meetings turned into twice a month, then 3 times a month. Suddenly, there were weekday happy hours with women from the club, Sunday brunch meetups, special events at vineyards outside the city. She was going more frequently, and every time I asked about it, she had an explanation ready. Her phone became permanently attached to her hand, always texting and always checking notifications. She started dressing nicer for these wine events than she dressed for actual important occasions. New outfits, expensive jewelry, getting her hair done at salons that charged twice what her regular place cost. She joined a gym and started going twice a week in the mornings before work, suddenly very concerned about her appearance in ways she hadn't been in years. Our intimate life went from regular and connected to basically non-existent over the course of about 6 months. We went from being close maybe twice a week to once every 2 or 3 weeks. And when it did happen, she would just lay there, I guess is how I would describe it. I tried talking to her about the distance I was feeling multiple times over those months, asked if she was happy, if something was wrong between us, if there was anything I could do differently. She would tell me everything was fine and I was reading too much into things. Made me feel like I was being paranoid or needy for even bringing it up. So I backed off and tried to give her space and hoped whatever phase this was would pass. Then 7 months ago, something happened that made everything snap into focus. I got a Facebook message from a woman I didn't know asking if I had a minute to talk about something important. Her profile said she lived in Rio Rancho, worked as a teacher, married with 2 teenage kids. I had no idea who she was or why she would be contacting me. I messaged back asking what this was about, and she said, "I think your wife and my husband are having an affair." I was like, what the hell is this woman talking about? My wife isn't having an affair. That was my initial response. She said her husband had been acting suspicious for over a year, coming home late from work, taking phone calls in other rooms, making excuses to leave the house on weekends. She had finally gone through his phone 2 weeks earlier while he was in the shower and found months of text messages between him and my wife. Explicit messages, plans to meet and have sex, discussions about how they were both going to handle their respective spouses, finding out eventually. She sent me screenshots of some of the messages, and they were detailed enough that there was zero doubt about what was happening. My wife and this guy had been seeing each other for almost 3 years, and I didn't even have a fucking clue. The wine club was real, but she had been using it as cover to meet him. The weekday happy hours, the Sunday brunches, the special vineyard events. Half of them were legitimate, and half were excuses to spend time with him. This woman, this other betrayed spouse, told me she was confronting her husband that night and filing for divorce immediately. She said she wanted to give me a heads up, so I wasn't blindsided like she had been. I thanked her for reaching out and told her I was sorry we were both dealing with this. I was at work trying to process what I had just learned. The rage I felt was beyond anything I'd ever experienced in my life, not just at her for the cheating, but at myself for being stupid enough to believe her weak excuses for almost 3 years. I sensed something was wrong, and instead of trusting my instincts, I let her gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. When I got home that evening, I didn't say anything to her about what I knew. I needed time to think and plan, because confronting her emotionally would give her the chance to spin the story or make promises she had no intention of keeping. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, going through the motions at work and at home while my mind raced through options. Then I called a divorce attorney whose name I got from a guy at work who went through a divorce almost 3 years earlier, set up a consultation for the following week, took a personal day off work to meet with her, showed her the screenshots the other woman had sent me, explained the whole situation. She listened carefully, took notes, asked questions about our finances and our daughter and what I wanted out of this. I told her I wanted primary custody because my schedule was more stable, and I'd always been the more hands-on parent anyway. I wanted us to sell the house and split the proceeds, or I wanted to buy her out if I could swing it financially. I wanted this divorce done as fast as New Mexico law allowed because I couldn't stomach the idea of living under the same roof with her any longer than necessary. She explained that New Mexico is a no-fault community property state, which meant the affair wouldn't matter for dividing assets, but could potentially factor into custody decisions. With one kid and relatively simple finances, we could probably wrap this up in 3 to 4 months if we moved efficiently. She would draft a petition, file it with the court, and arrange for a process server to deliver it. I paid her retainer that day, $2,000 that I'd pulled from our savings account earlier that morning after opening a new account in just my name at a different bank. Community property laws meant I was legally entitled to half our savings, so I transferred exactly that amount to my new account. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly got everything organized, changed my direct deposit to go to the new account so my paychecks would stop funding our joint account, made copies of every important document, insurance policies, mortgage papers, tax returns, our daughter's school records, rented a storage unit on the west side of town, and started slowly moving boxes of my personal belongings there on my lunch breaks. Nothing obvious, just things she wouldn't notice right away. The attorney finished drafting the divorce petition 3 weeks after our initial meeting. She called me to review the final version, made sure I understood everything we were asking for regarding custody and property division. I approved it, and she filed it with the court that same day. Then I waited for the right opportunity to execute the plan. That opportunity came when my wife mentioned she was going to Santa Fe for a spa weekend with 2 women from her wine club. They booked some resort for Saturday and Sunday, leaving Friday after work and coming back Sunday evening. She asked if I could handle our daughter for the weekend, and I said absolutely no problem. Inside, I was grateful because it gave me the perfect window to move out without drama or confrontation in front of our kid. The process server called me Thursday afternoon to confirm he would serve the paper Sunday when she returned. I had given him her expected arrival time based on what she had told me, between 4:30 and 5:30 Sunday afternoon. He said he would be parked on the street waiting and would serve her the second she pulled into the driveway. Friday evening, she packed her bag and left for Santa Fe, kissing our daughter goodbye and telling me to call if I needed anything. I watched her drive away and felt absolutely nothing. No sadness, no regret, no second thoughts about what I was about to do. Saturday morning, I called my 2 younger brothers who live in town and asked if they could help me move some furniture. Didn't tell them why over the phone, just said I would explain when they got there. They showed up with a pickup truck, and I finally told them I was leaving my wife and needed to get my stuff out before she got home Sunday. They were shocked, but they didn't ask a lot of questions, just started helping me load boxes. We spent 6 hours Saturday moving everything that belonged to me out of that house. My clothes, my shoes, my laptop and desk, my gaming console and TV from our bedroom, my dresser, nightstand, bathroom stuff, everything. The furniture we bought together stayed because it was community property and would be divided in the divorce settlement. But anything that was purely mine got loaded into trucks and hauled to the storage unit. Our daughter was at her friend's house for a sleepover that night, so she wasn't there to see any of this happening. By Saturday evening, the house looked noticeably emptier, but not completely gutted. Her stuff was all still there. Our daughter's room was completely untouched. The shared furniture remained. I just made sure there was zero trace of me left anywhere. Sunday morning, I sat down with our daughter and had the hardest conversation I've ever had in my life. Told her that her mom and I were splitting up, that it wasn't her fault, that both of us loved her very much, but we couldn't be married anymore. She cried and asked why. I said sometimes adults grow apart and can't make a marriage work. Told her she would still see both of us regularly, and her life wouldn't change as much as she might fear it would. She was devastated, but she's a mature kid, and I think some part of her had sensed things weren't right between us for a while. Sunday afternoon, around 4 p.m., I packed a bag with clothes for the week and loaded our daughter into my truck. We drove to my brother's house, where we would be staying temporarily while I looked for an apartment. At 4:45, the process server texted me that he was in position. At 5:06, he texted, "She's here, walking up now." At 5:08, he texted served. She looks confused. I didn't respond. My soon-to-be ex-wife left almost 30 voicemails Sunday evening and sent over 100 text messages. I never answered any of them. I didn't block her, just chose not to answer. She tried calling from her office phone Monday morning, and I didn't answer that either. Finally, she called my attorney, demanding to know where I was and where our daughter was. My attorney told her that our daughter was safe with me, that I was exercising my parental rights to keep her in my care for the time being, and that all communication needed to go through legal counsel from this point forward. My wife hired an attorney within 2 days, someone from the same insurance company law firm where her affair partner worked, which seemed bold but also stupid. Her lawyer called my lawyer trying to negotiate immediate custody arrangements and access to the house. My lawyer responded with a motion for temporary custody and exclusive use of the marital home pending the divorce. We had our first court hearing 3 weeks later for temporary orders. The judge reviewed everything, looked at both our work schedules and our documented involvement in our daughter's life, listened to both lawyers' arguments, granted me temporary primary physical custody, with her getting supervised visitation every other weekend pending a full custody evaluation, granted me temporary exclusive use of the house, which meant she couldn't come back without permission. She had to continue paying half the mortgage from her income since it was marital debt, but she couldn't live there. Her face when the judge read that ruling was fucking priceless. She tried to argue that I illegally removed her from the home, and the judge cut her off and said I hadn't removed anyone. I simply moved out and filed for divorce, which was completely legal. The fact that I moved back in after she was served didn't change anything since we were still both entitled to occupy the property until custody and possession were determined, which he just determined in my favor. The next 4 months were a series of court dates, mediation sessions, financial disclosures, and custody evaluations. She fought me hard on custody, which was almost funny, given that I was the one doing most of the parenting work for years. I had documentation showing I was the one who went to parent-teacher conferences, took our daughter to doctor appointments, helped with homework, drove to soccer practices. Her attorney tried to paint me as vindictive for not letting our daughter see her mother freely, but my attorney showed the court at the text messages I received from her affair partner's wife. It demonstrated that my wife had been engaged in a long-term affair while neglecting her parental responsibilities. The custody evaluator spent 3 hours interviewing our daughter in a private setting, asking about her daily routines, who helped with homework, who took her to activities, who she felt most comfortable talking to about problems. Our daughter told the evaluator that I was the one who made her breakfast every morning, helped her with math homework, drove her to soccer practice twice a week, and was always home by 6 for dinner. She said her mom had been busy with wine club stuff a lot and sometimes seemed distracted even when they were together. The evaluator's written report recommended I retain primary physical custody. She said our daughter demonstrated a strong attachment to me and felt more secure with my consistent presence and stable routine. She noted that while she loved both parents, she clearly viewed me as her primary caregiver and source of stability. In mediation, we finally hammered out a settlement after 2 full-day sessions and countless back-and-forth negotiations between our attorneys. My ex wanted 50-50 custody, but her lawyer knew they would lose that fight given the evaluator's recommendation. She wanted to keep the house and buy me out, but she couldn't qualify for a mortgage on her income alone, and her credit wasn't that great. She wanted me to pay spousal support, claiming she had sacrificed career advancement to raise our daughter, which was demonstrably false given our equal parenting time records. I got primary physical custody with her getting our daughter every other weekend and 1 evening a week for dinner. The house would be sold and proceeds split equally after mortgage payoff. All other assets divided 50-50 per community property law. No spousal support from either party. We would each keep our own retirement accounts and handle our own debts going forward. She signed the agreement in early March, 4 months after I had her served. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later when the judge signed the final decree. Total time from filing to final decree was just under 5 months. The house sold in April for $310,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and closing costs, we each walked away with about $62,000 each. I used my share as a down payment on a smaller 3-bedroom house in a different school district. I hated doing that, taking her away from her friends, but it's only 20 minutes away. My ex moved into an apartment but took her about 35 minutes away from her job. Don't know if she's still with her affair partner and don't care enough to ask. Our daughter adjusted better than I expected, probably because kids are resilient and because she could see I was making every effort to keep her life stable. She still sees her mom regularly, and I've never once badmouthed her mother in front of her because that's not my job as a parent. But she's old enough to form her own opinions about who was there for her consistently. Looking back on that Sunday afternoon, when my wife came home to find a process server waiting, I don't regret a single decision. Could I have handled it differently? Sure, I could have confronted her when I first found out, given her a chance to explain, suggested marriage counseling. But she had 3 years to come clean about the affair. Even if she did come clean, I don't think I would have stayed then. 3 years of opportunities to be honest with me, instead of lying to my face every single day. Why would I waste time trying to save something she had already destroyed? Some people called me cold for how I handled it, said serving her with papers while she was away, thought that was cowardly. Well, those friends, I don't associate with them anymore. Fuck them, they were not in my shoes, and they didn't read messages between their spouse and someone else talking about how gullible and oblivious I was. I did what I needed to do to protect myself and my daughter and move forward with dignity. And honestly, after hearing what the process server told me how it went down, priceless, best decision I ever made.